Hello everyone, welcome to ChessVisor. In today's video, I am going to show you another interesting game played between Hans Niemann and Fredrick Svane. So it is from the Grenke's open section, 8th round. Without much delay, let's get started. With the white pieces, Hans Niemann starts the game with a 1 e4 and we have Sicilian by Fredrick. And after knight f3, we have the French variation of the Sicilian, knight c3. So he is trying, some kind of closed position after knight c6, and even he goes for this rare continuation, that is pawn to h3, bishop e7, pawn to g3. So it looks like an king's Indian attack, but the slight difference is that the knight is sitting on c3 rather than sitting on d2. So pawn to d6, bishop to g2, knight f6, and then both side castles, pawn to d3, and then rook b8. So trying to push forward with the b5 idea. So stops that by playing pawn to a4, and now Fredrick goes a6 and renews the threat. But here he completely ignores and plays bishop e3. This is kind of a provoking move actually for black here, because the tempting idea is to push forward with the d pawn. Why not? So the problem is, like, after you take, and then we can play this move pawn to d4, and now the position is equal. So in case if you are ready to capture, then you are the one who is going to have a isolated queen pawn in the middle of the board, and it is going to be a long time target for the white pieces. But in the game, what happened, he played pawn to b5, and then after 8 takes b5, 8 takes b5, now that knight is going to be kicked. But here interestingly, Niemann plays the other knight to d2 square. Once the so here he is threatening to fork the knight as well as the bishop. So now he takes, after e takes d5, e takes d5, and here he moves the bishop away. So in this position also, that is, this knight is undefended, so you can take advantage of play by playing this interesting move, that is rook e1. So in case if you fork, then we can take on c6, and after bishop takes h3, bishop f4, attacking the rook, and then you can go for this idea, so d into c3 and then b into c3. But in the game, what happened, he plays directly bishop f4, attacking the rook, and the rook lifts to b6, and now so he takes advantage of that last move by playing rook to a8 himself, pawn to h6, and then knight b3. So the structure denotes, or it's kind of a weak structure, because you are overextended your pawn. So black should be careful about his pawn structure on the queen side. So he is trying to target that now. So rook a6, just attacking the, or trying to force the exchange here. So rook takes a6, and then bishop takes a6, defends the b pawn, rook to e1, and then rook to e8, bishop e5, and then knight takes e5, and then rook takes e5. Now that the pawn is under attack, so he plays pawn to c4. So after knight to d4, so here he plays bishop to c5. So in this position, he he unleashed the discovery on the rook, so he is expecting him to exchange here. But in this position, Niemann plays this move, knight to c6, threatening the queen, and also it defends the rook as well. So here the main move, or the good move for black to consider to stay in the equality, he has to sacrifice the bishop on f2, and after king takes f2, he has to do this queen b6 check, and then pawn to d4, queen takes c6, and the game is completely equal. But what happened in the game, he played queen to d6, and he is threatening two pieces at once. So it looks like very logical condition, but okay, this is forcing the rook exchange with a check. But now what black missed is that there is a small tactic is available for white, and if you want to find that, you can pause the video and try to find it. Here he simply exchanged the rook, and after exchanging the rook, knight takes e8, and now he plays knight takes d5, a brilliant knight sacrifice on c6 square. So this knight moves and takes a pawn, but that leaves this knight as undefended piece. But the problem is, you cannot touch the knight, as you are landing into the the family fork, or the royal family fork. So knight e7 check, and then after bishop e7, bishop takes c6, knight d6, d into c4, and this imbalance is not enough for black to hold this game. White would win the game without much trouble. So after king f8, now Niemann wins the pawn here, and after knight c3, dropping the knight back, and now the bishop is defending the knight. So c takes d3 was played, and in this position, after queen takes d3, this is also moment where black can neutralize the game by playing simply queen takes d3. Okay, though Niemann has a pawn extra, but after c takes d3, the pawn is split up, and it is very easy for us to target now. Say for example, after pawn b4, knight e4, bishop e7, pawn d4, and then knight c7, black can reroute his pieces and put it in a better square to try to target the weak pawns. But unfortunately in the game he played queen f6, and that was the last chance for black. And now here Niemann played queen to d2, and after knight d6 he plays pawn to b4, attacking the bishop. So here also, he could have put the knight in the center directly, knight to d5. This is another interesting way for white to continue. Say for example, after queen takes b2, we can go knight b6, and now you should be very, very careful. Say for example, if you simply capture, then you are running into a lot of trouble. After queen d6, king g8, and then knight e7 check, you are losing a piece, and also you are in the mating pattern. Example, king h7, bishop e4 check, pawn g6, bishop takes g6 even possible, because if you take, it's just mate in two. So that's why knight to d5 was a strong option for Niemann. But in the game, what happened? He played pawn to b4 directly. But now, even after the bishop moving to the somewhere like, okay, here actually he didn't move the bishop, rather he countered the queen. So knight c4, queen e1, and then he played bishop takes f2 check, taking advantage of the undefended knight on the c3. It's being defended, but now the queen is kind of overloaded. So he plays queen takes f2, and then after queen takes c3, he goes queen c5 check, and now white is completely winning. And it is because of the pawn structure and the piece position which he is having. Especially if you look at the light square bishop, he is actually, if you look at this bishop, it's very passively placed, and that is main reason actually. And also here actually black won the pawn back, sorry about that. So king to g8, and then he plays knight e7 check, king h8, and then king to h2. So he prophylactically moved the king away so that there won't be any check on the back rank. So queen f6 was tried, and then queen a7 going to the back rank. So you have to guard the mate now. So king h7, bishop e4 check, and after pawn g6, he sacks the bishop on g6, and you cannot take the bishop here actually. So you are running into discovery. Not only discovery, you are actually going to lose the game in just like 3 or 4 moves based on how black responds. But in the game, what happened? He played king g7, and then bishop dropped back, bishop d3, and then in the process again, Niemann won the pawn on g6 square. So knight to d6, and then knight to d5, queen e5, queen takes a6, and then queen takes d5. And now, as you can see, Niemann is having 2 pawns on the queen side. Whether he is going to promote the pawns or not is the rest of the game. So let's see. Queen a1 check, and then pawn f6 blocks. Queen a7 check, and then king f8, and then queen b8 check, and then king e7, queen a7 check. So after a couple of checks, shuffling moves, king to d8, and then he dropped the queen all the way back to target the h6, and now that's defended. And now since it's a winning ending for white, Niemann goes for the exchange here. So queen takes g5, f takes g5, and then after king to g2 in this position, Fredrick simply resigned the game. So why would he resign? So simply because these 2 pawns will outplay this. And one more thing, this bishop is a dominating piece when we compare this knight. So all the light squares will be covered by this bishop. I will show you a sample line here. So maybe let's say king e7. The king has to go to either side of the board, either to king side or to the queen side to target these weak pawns. But black can actually stop that temporarily. So pawn to h4, g into h4, g into h4, and then king e5. So if you go to the other side of the board, the king will always come back. So let's say c3, king g7, and then bishop f5. In case if the knight takes, that's an immediate win. So that's why bishop f5. And then after king f6, bishop d3, covering the c4 square. And also e4 square is very important because that's the knight jumping square. So king f4, king f6, stopping the king advance again. But then you can wait with the bishop. Bishop c2, king e6, and then bishop check, king f6, and then pawn to h5. Again, another waiting move, knight to e8. Knight to e8 is the move that black can actually play. And after king to e4, now that knight can always come back and give the check and block the entry point. But now the king can always go here, but now the king is defending the knight. So after king e7, now you have to defend the the d3 square and as well as the e4 square. So for that we can simply put the bishop on c2. So after bishop c2, let's say the knight goes back, then I can play the most simple move, bishop to d3, and that's over. So in the next couple of moves, I'm going to capture this pawn, and then I can roll the pawns down. So that's why, considering this a long end game actually. So So this is again a sample line which ran like more than 10 moves, I think. So Frederick resigned the game, and with this win, not only with this win, in this particular tournament, Grenke Open section, actually Niemann, is the champion of Grenke Open section. Niemann had a great tournament, and he won this tournament with the score of 8 out of 9 with the 7 wins and the 2 draws. And what do you think about this? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and still if you're not subscribed to this channel, consider subscribing to it. As usual, this is Chess Visor, your wise choice to improve your chess.